Cantada numero 9. Ancora il quinto Churchill con la città de Dite. Le Erini, l'Angelo, sesto Churchill, gli eretichi. Il poeta vedi sui bastioni de Dite le Erini. O, lui e Virgilio, aiutai da un angelo del ciel, che versi la porta de Dite, gli va drento. Là sei eretichi, condannai a patire drento tombe sproventi. Vedendo me, che ziera palpi pio che avevo mi, colù mese tornato, e se che trattignuto il cucer mio. Fermandose, le orecchie il ga impirato, che non arrivava tanto in là a osservar per via dal scuro e del caligo ostiato. Vincer sta guerra dovevo arrivar, il fa. Se no, eppur e la sega offerto. Quell'altro cosa che me fa aspettare. Ma mi però vedevo che coverto con parole diverse me aveva il suo discorso proprio appena aperto. Solo che la paura mi faceva credere che quel che non aveva dito fossi preso da qualche lui intendeva. Pienso del limbo mai in sto brutto sito sul fondo qua, quei che, anche se non spera di star senza altra pena, gli ha diritto? Così ho domandato a lui. Se avera de raro, gli ha risposto, che un de noi se metti a batter come mi sta terra. Mi son già sta qua, voi o no voi, una volta, causa de quella riton che tornava alle ombre i corpi sui. A mi, appena dal corpo l'impiantò, l'ha mega fatto andare oltre a quel muro per giocare su un dell'ultimo terzione. Quella è il luogo più basso e più scuro, il più lontano del cielo che tutto ruca. Conosco bene la strada, sta sicuro. La gira via sta spuzzolente piuca intorno alla città. Indò che ormai senza questioni non versiamo cluca. Dell'altro mi non mi ricordo sai, per via dell'occio, in su son mese andato, su un'alta torre che merli sprovai, là che all'istante dritte se alzà tre furie dell'inferno insanguinate, che il corpo è sesto de babalega. Le sé e bisse verdi incinturate, de serbitoli e vipere coi spini legale zempie tutte involtizzate. E lui, che sa quelle le capiatini de Proserpina ben il conosceva, guarda, il me fa, le malegnase erini, me gera e vien star qua, a man leva, de sifone se in meso, a destra a letto che piansi. Con le mani se batteva e le si sgraffiava con le onge il petto, e le zigava, ma in una maniera che mi costretto a cucere a spaghetto. Medusa, vien, che lo femo de Piera! Ma c'è Teseo, che avessimo dovuto, le diceva cucando zo per terra. Stropite gli occhi e non guardare in su, che se viene il gorgone e ti lo vedi, Indrio, non ti tornerà mai più. Così è il maestro. E il me ha messo i dedi, pensando che mica mi non mi distrigo, sui miei, e me ha girato via dai pareti. Chi che non ha la testa per intrigo, che cerchi di capire quel che in scondon sti versi strambi che mi dico. Al turbido patò veniva un son, un fracasso, che fava un tal spavento che da tremà le rive pasquasson. Pareva come quando si alza un vento tra caldo e freddo, un de quei neverini che scassa il bosco e senza sentimento spacazza tutto, fiori, rami e spini, e va via pien de polvere per sora e fa scampar le belve i contadini. E il Megati scoperto gli occhi allora e dito, lumica su, par sta spiuma, indocca il caligo se più fisso ancora. Come le crote, che via se caluma co vien la vista che le magna, e tutte quante dell'acqua in terra le si ingruma, così miara de anime distrutte, ho visto filar via de un che de blava vignava so per stise, a piante sute. Drioman, via de davanti, e separava con la manzanca quel calico grasso, ma solo sto fastidio il dimostrava. Mandà del cielo gli era là da basso. Mego voltado, e il ministro mega fatto modo di far rinchin e non far ciasso. Con che tiro che se rivado il matto, con una sbizza che aveva trio e aperto la porta, dito fatto. Sentazza brutta, scazzai via di Dio, il attacca sull'orrendo soier. E in dove ve viens mai sto poffa Dio? Perché ve mette contro quel voler che il suo lavoro non impianta mai in metà? Ve va ogni volta appeso sto mestiere, scornarve col destino. Cosa ve fa? Servero vostro, se vi ricordate, ancora il galabarba il gospelà. Come se vignu, poi si torna indietro, senza parlarne. Ma il negati mostrato di aver altri pensieri che non quei là de larghe a chi che passa vado. Delle parole sue rassicurai verso quel luogo se che aveva avviato. Senza aver longhi, dentro se mandai e mi, tutto curioso di guardare come che in sta fortezza si trattai, come appena dentro, tacco a lumicare, di qua e di là, vedo una gran campagna, tutto un lamento, tutto un tormentare. Come in Arles, là che rodano stagna, e come a Pola, attaccata al Quarnero, che è il confine dell'Italia, il sera e il bagno, se tombe che fa a gombe un cimitero, così le fava qua. Ma ancora più, Trento ipativa, che andò che iero, fiamme che con tutto intorno vedù, e tanto iera ste tombe incandide, che neanche al ferro del fabbro fa de più. Le iera scoverciate, ma impignide de persone che se lagnava dentro de esser tanto misere scunide. E mi, maestro, chi è che se sente? Ma che in sti sarcofagi ben non se vedi, che fa tanti sospiri della mente. E lui, i resiarchi de tutte le fedi, con chi che Sant'Andrio, qua se finidi. Che ne se sai di più che non ti credi. Compagno co compagno seppellidi, i ga, drio il genere, più o meno fogo. A destra il gavoltà, e siamo partiti. Tra stide qua e le mura, per un logo.
Hello, Professor Isaac Bickler. Thank you for being here today.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And so first of all, may I ask you to just introduce yourself for those who are watching and who may not know you?
I'm a professor of Italian at the University of Toronto, and I teach Italian and also Renaissance Studies at Victoria College. I've been on faculty since, oh gosh, a long, long time ago. In fact, I'm about to retire. So it's been a lifetime spent at the university. I work on basically 16th century, 15th, 16th century Italian culture, particularly theater, women, sexuality, gender, confraternities, things of that sort. And in my early years on faculty, I taught Dante. They gave me the Dante class, the Italian 321. And for many, many years, I taught Dante and loved it very much.
I would like to start our conversation by asking you to share with us maybe the first time that you read Dante, and do you have any memory associated with Dante and his works, especially as someone who taught Dante for many years?
Well, I first read Dante in third year university. I studying Italian, and there was a third year course on Dante's Vita Nuova and then Inferno. And then in fourth year, we did Purgatorio and Paradiso. And I studied at McMaster University. My professor was Diane Dyers, Professor Diane Dyers, who's a graduate of Victoria College, I discovered much later. And I still see her very often at the college. And basically what we did then, it was fairly standard at that time to do this. We studied Dante more or less in translation. We would read 6 or 9 verses, and then we would paraphrase them in English and discuss them. When I started teaching, I used that method, but then I got carried away. So what we ended up doing is actually reading longer passages and getting more and more into discussion with the students and what Dante was saying about his own times, but also I think what Dante says to us today. Because one of the things about Dante is that he may be a reflection, an echo of the late Middle Ages in Italy. He may be a light pointing towards the new era, the Renaissance that's coming into Italy. But he's also very, very much relevant for us today. Many of the questions that Dante raises in his Divina Commedia are questions that we still struggle with. And especially young people enjoy thinking about those questions through the prism, through the glasses of Dante's Divine Comedy.
And so today we are focusing on this on the ninth canto of Inferno. But I also know that you offered to read Paradiso 17, the 17th canto of Paradiso as well. Even though in the end for this series we cover only Inferno. So can you tell us more about your choice of the cantos, especially the ninth of Inferno? And is there any connection between this canto and Paradiso 17?
Yes, there is a connection between the two of them and me as well. I chose them very appropriately. As I said before, Dante still speaks to us today. And in Canto 17 of Paradiso is probably a lot more famous than Canto 9 of Inferno. It's famous because in that Paradiso 17, Dante is talking to one of his ancestors who prophesizes that Dante will become an exile. There's the famous verses there that Dante will walk up and down other people's staircases, and he will taste the salty bread of other people's cuisine. Florentine bread is baked without salt. And so it's a canto that talks about the future exile of Dante. And that touches a chord with me because I see myself as an exile. I was born in a wonderful island in the Adriatic Sea. But after World War II, because my father was Austrian and my mother was Italian, we were ethnically cleansed out of there. And so my mother's family, all of it, and my family, my father, my mother, and I, had to leave, and we became exiles. We have since gone back many times as tourists, but nonetheless, when we left, we had no idea that we were ever going to be allowed back. The ethnic cleansing that went on against Germans and Italians in that area, the ethnic cleansing was carried out by the new Yugoslav regime and the partisan forces. There were a lot of killings, a lot of violence. And so it was a brutal period. So Canto 17 of Paradiso when Cacciaguida tells Dante that he will become an exile and he'll know how bitter it is to walk along other people's pathways and to eat other people's food, very much echoes what my family and my extended family too has suffered. And so that's the personal reason why this. Not being able to read for you Canto 17 of Paradiso, I had to choose something else. And I chose Inferno 9 because, again, I think it touches on the plight of people who face the barbaric violence of the Furies. So the three Furies on the walls, on the ramparts of the city of Dis, the city of the heretics, the non-believers. Those Furies echo for me the fury of war, the fury of ethnic cleansing, the fury that my family had to face, and which led my family to pack up everything they could pack up and leave. On my mother's side, they left with just a suitcase. My father, mother, and I left with a little bit more, but not much. And we had to abandon our hometown and leave the country and go somewhere else. So when Dante and Virgil are standing in front of the lock gates of Dis and the Furies are howling and threatening them, I see that as an echo of my experience, but also the experience of every single human being that has been confronted by the violence of war, by the violence of ethnic cleansing, by the violence of people gone mad who attack and disrupt the flow of life and force people to become exiles, to become refugees, to move to another country, not because they want to, but because they have to. So that's the really personal reasons why Paradiso 17, Inferno 9 were the two cantos that struck my desire, that were my favorite ones.
So maybe the next part is could be connected to what you have just said or what you have just told us. The next part that I'd like to ask you is about the choice of language. Would you like to share with us why you chose to read this canto in Triestino?
Yes. Well, in fact, the dialect of the area that I come from is a Venetian dialect from the Venetian group, but with variants, local variants. Now, the dialect I spoke as a child, and I speak still with my mom, is the dialect from our little town on the island of Lucine. So I speak Lusignan with her, which is a dialect that is basically Venetian, with a lot of influence from Trieste and the city of Fiume, which today is called Rijeka because it's part of Croatia. And it has a lot of words in it that are in fact Croatian words. So it's a dialect that is primarily Italian, but with a fair amount of Croatian and with a fair amount of German words and Hungarian words, because the area was very multilingual at that time. It still very much is. People in the area, the young people all speak English, but they also speak Italian, many of them. They speak Slovenian, Croatian, and so it's multilingual area. Now, I could not find you a translation in my dialect. So I tried to find one in the dialect of Fiume, Rijeka, which is the bigger town. But again, it's not available. And so the next choice was Trieste. I spend a lot of time in Trieste. I have a lot of friends in Trieste. And Triestinian dialect, in fact, is very, very close to my dialect.
Is there a translation of the Divine Comedy in your dialect? Is it just that you can?
I was trying to convince colleagues and friends in Fiume, Rijeka, to actually do one themselves. but the time ran out and we did not have time to do that. But I have colleagues who teach Italian at the University of Rijeka, Fiume, and who are native Italians from that area, and they speak the dialect, and they have a lot of students. So they just published a dictionary of Fiuman dialect. And so I thought maybe they could try and translate one canto and I would read that.
Yes.
But we basically ran out of time.
And we would be happy to have one more language or dialect of the Divine Comedy translated. Maybe you can could also lead the project.
I'll try to bend some arms, but I don't think I'll make it.
So I'd like to ask a little bit more about this, the translation in the Triestinian dialect. Do you find anything interesting in terms of like choice of words, like the sound or the rhymes, and maybe the overall faithfulness to or difference from the original version?
What I found really interesting were there were quite a lot of words that are old dialect words, which have fallen out of use for me, for example. But also when I spend time in Trieste, I don't normally hear them. But here they were in the canto, and I recognized them immediately. And remember that in my youth, I did use words like that. So it was a beautiful way to restore the language in a way.
Finally, I'd like to thank you again for being here today and for sharing stories about your relationship with Dante, with us. And also thank you for, especially for the opportunity to learn more about the Triestino, the Triestinian dialect, and also your own dialect through the translation of Inferno 9. So thank you very much, Professor Eisenbichler.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure.